I never used to be afraid of elevators. Now I can't even look at one without breaking into a cold sweat. It started 3 weeks ago at Westlake Towers where I work. Or worked, I should say. 68 floors of gleaming steel and glass, the pride of downtown. I was pulling late nights trying to finish the Peterson account, often finding myself alone in the building save for the night security guard who dozed at his desk in the lobby. That Wednesday night, I packed up around 1 a.m., eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets. The hallway was eerily silent as I made my way to the elevator bank. Only one of the 5 was operational at that hour. Energy-saving measures, they said. I pressed the call button and waited, the overhead fluorescents humming softly. When the doors parted, I stepped inside without looking up, my mind already halfway home to my bed. It wasn't until the doors closed that I registered something was off. The elevator smelled strange, like wet earth and something metallic. Blood? No, more like old pennies. I jabbed the lobby button, eager to be done with the day. Nothing happened. I pressed it again, harder this time. Still nothing. Annoyed, I looked up at the floor indicator. Instead of showing 44 where I'd boarded, it displayed a symbol I didn't recognize, like a strange triangle with a line through it. I blinked, thinking my tired eyes were playing tricks. When I looked again, the display read B5. That was impossible. Westlake only had 4 basement levels. The elevator began to descend. Great, I muttered, figuring I'd have to ride it all the way down and then back up. I pulled out my phone to call security, but there was no signal. Typical. The descent continued far longer than it should have. After what felt like minutes, I began to worry. How far down were we going? The building plans only showed 4 basement levels, but what if there were hidden floors? Government installations or something similarly conspiratorial? I laughed nervously at my own imagination. Too many late-night horror films. The display now read B16. My heart rate quickened. This was no longer funny. I hit the emergency button. No alarm sounded. I tried the phone. Dead. B27. I began repeatedly pressing the lobby button, then every button on the panel. Nothing responded. The elevator kept descending at a steady pace, almost smoothly, as if it were falling through liquid rather than air. B39. The lights flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw something reflected in the polished doors, a figure standing behind me. I spun around. Empty. Just my frazzled nerves. B48. The elevator slowed finally. Relief washed over me. Whatever malfunction had occurred was resolving itself. The car gently eased to a stop, and the doors slid open with a pleasant ding. I found myself staring not at a basement parking garage or maintenance level, but a long, dimly lit corridor that couldn't exist. The walls were rough-hewn stone, damp with condensation. The air that rushed in was cold and smelled of mineral decay. I remained frozen in place, unwilling to step out into whatever this place was. Before I could decide what to do, I heard footsteps echoing from somewhere down the corridor, growing louder. Someone was coming. Hello? Security. I called out, my voice cracking. The footsteps stopped, then resumed, quicker now. I jabbed frantically at the closed door button. For once, it responded. The doors began to slide shut, agonizingly slow. Through the narrowing gap, I caught a glimpse of something approaching, a hunched silhouette moving with an unnatural gait. The doors sealed just as the figure reached them. A heavy thud shook the elevator car, then another, then scratching like claws against metal. I backed into the corner, my breath coming in short gasps. The display now read B49. The elevator began to rise. I nearly cried with relief. Whatever had happened, whatever I'd seen, I was heading back up, away from that thing. My relief was short-lived. At B40, the elevator slowed again. No. Please, no. It stopped. The doors opened. A different corridor this time. Concrete walls lined with pipes. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, several of them flickering. And standing directly in front of the elevator was a man in coveralls, his back to me. "Excuse me, I need to get back to the lobby," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't move, didn't acknowledge me at all. "Sir?" Slowly he turned. His face, God, his face. Where features should have been was just smooth, blank skin. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. I screamed, pressing myself against the back wall of the elevator. The faceless man tilted his head, as if curious, then took a step forward. The doors closed, cutting him off mid-step. The elevator resumed its ascent. I slid down to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest. This wasn't happening. Couldn't be happening. I was asleep at my desk, that was it. A nightmare born from exhaustion and too much caffeine. But I knew I wasn't asleep. The elevator continued upward, passing basement levels, then the lobby, then climbing floor by floor through the tower. The display numbers ticked by: 15, 16, 17. It stopped again at 44, my floor. I held my breath as the doors opened. The familiar hallway stretched before me, exactly as I'd left it. Lights dimmed for the night, potted plants casting long shadows. Normal. Safe. I hesitated. What if this was another trick? From somewhere deep in the building, I heard the distant sound of another elevator moving. The hairs on my neck stood up. I bolted from the car, sprinting down the hallway back to my office. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, then dragged a heavy filing cabinet in front of it for good measure. My hand shook as I pulled out my cell phone. Still no signal. The landline on my desk. I lunged for it, dialing 911.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes. I'm at Westlake Towers. Something's wrong with the elevators. I stopped, suddenly aware of how insane I would sound. I need help getting out of the building.
Sir, are you in immediate danger?
I'm not sure.
We'll send an officer to assist you. Please stay on the line.
I clutched the phone like a lifeline, my eyes fixed on the door. Minutes crawled by. In the distance, I could hear elevators moving, stopping, starting again. A knock at my door nearly stopped my heart.
Sir? Police? Are you in there?
I moved the filing cabinet with trembling hands and opened the door. A uniformed officer stood in the hallway, looking concerned.
Are you all right, sir?
The elevators, there's something wrong with them. He nodded sympathetically.
Let's get you out of here. We can use the stairs.
I followed him down the emergency stairwell, 44 flights, until we reached the ground floor. The lobby was empty except for the security guard, who was now wide awake and looking concerned.
Found him on the 44th floor. Says there's an issue with the elevators.
The guard frowned.
All systems are showing normal, sir. But we'll have maintenance check first thing tomorrow.
The officer escorted me outside where the cool night air helped clear my head. I thanked him, feeling embarrassed now. Had I really experienced all that? Or had I fallen asleep at my desk and dreamed the whole thing?
Do you need medical attention?
I shook my head, just tired. Working too hard. He nodded.
Get some rest. You look like you've seen a ghost.
I took a cab home and fell into bed, convincing myself it had been a stress-induced hallucination. The next morning, I called in sick. I couldn't face that building again so soon. When I returned to work 2 days later, there was a memo about routine elevator maintenance being performed. Nothing about mysterious basement levels or faceless maintenance men. Of course not. For a week, I took the stairs despite working on the 44th floor. My colleagues thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. Better winded than whatever I'd experienced that night. Eventually, though, after a particularly grueling day, when my legs were already sore from a weekend hike, I broke down and pressed the elevator call button. I told myself it had been a one-time thing. A waking nightmare. The doors opened. Empty. Normal. I stepped inside with two other people, a false confidence buoying me. Safety in numbers, right? We ascended normally to the 32nd floor, where both of my elevator companions exited. As the doors closed and I continued upward alone, the lights flickered once. The display, which had read 32, now showed that strange symbol again, the strange triangle with a line. My blood turned to ice. The elevator began to descend. No, not again. But this time, something was different. As we passed what should have been the lobby level, I noticed a small maintenance panel beneath the floor buttons that I hadn't seen before. Or perhaps it hadn't been there before. Desperate, I pried it open with my keys. Inside was a single red button with no label. What choice did I have? I pressed it. The elevator jerked to a halt so violently I was thrown against the wall. The lights went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I could hear something mechanical failing, cables straining. Then the emergency lights came on, bathing everything in a dim red glow. The display was now cycling through numbers and symbols rapidly, as if the system were having a seizure. A voice came over the speaker, not the usual automated elevator voice, but something distorted, barely human.
Why did you press that? You weren't supposed to find that.
I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The elevator shuddered, then began to rise again, faster than before. The display now showed impossible numbers, 127, 128, 129, far beyond the building's actual height. Where are you taking me?
Home.
The elevator slowed, stopped. The doors opened onto a vast, cavernous space filled with countless identical elevator cars, stretching as far as I could see. Some were moving up and down, others sat idle. And walking between them were figures, some human-looking, others decidedly not. One turned toward me. It was the faceless man from before, still in his coveralls. He raised a hand in what might have been greeting. The voice from the speaker continued.
We've been watching you. You're different. You saw beyond the veil. Most never do.
What is this place?
The space between. Elevators don't just connect floors. They connect realities. Most humans never notice because they're not paying attention. But you noticed.
The faceless man approached, holding something out to me. A small metal object that looked like an elevator key.
Join us. There are infinite buildings, infinite floors to maintain. We need someone who can move between them. Someone human, but aware.
I stare at the key, then at the faceless man, then at the endless expanse of elevators beyond. Was this real? Was I losing my mind? Then I thought about my life, my cramped apartment, my soul-crushing job, the endless cycle of work and sleep and work again. I reached for the key.
Welcome to the maintenance crew. Mind the gap between realities.
I felt a strange tingling sensation spreading from my hand throughout my body as my fingers closed around cold metal. Looking down, I saw my skin growing smooth, features blurring. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. I stepped out of the elevator and into my new existence. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm still learning the routes, the rules. How to move between floors that shouldn't connect, buildings that don't exist in the same dimension. Sometimes I see people like my former self, working late, tired, not paying attention as they step into an elevator. Most never notice when something's off. They stare at their phones, lost in their own worlds, even as we take them on brief detours through impossible spaces. But every so often, someone looks up. Someone notices. So if you're hearing this, pay attention the next time you're alone in an elevator and it takes just a little too long to reach your floor. That wasn't a mechanical delay. It was me watching to see if you're paying attention. If you're different, like I was. And if you see a maintenance worker with no face holding out a key, I suggest you take it. After all, someone has to maintain the spaces between. Someone has to make sure people get where they're going. Most of the time, anyway.